it's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome back to my channel. All right, so Jinger Vuolo is about to have a baby. Yep, that's right. Miss Vuolo is about to have a second child with her husband, Jeremy. Jeremy and Jinger are going to be welcoming a baby girl in about a week. Now, Jeremy and Jinger have had a very busy year. If you are not familiar with them, you should be, right? They're the Duggars. Thank you so much for joining me. Do me a favor if you like this kind of stuff, give me a thumbs up. Also, subscribe down here if you have not yet subscribed, and turn those notifications on so you know when I go live. Okay, so earlier this week, they dropped a podcast, and on the podcast, Jinger shared her faith story. But that wasn't actually the tea of this podcast. It was actually the tea in the beginning of the podcast that I thought was a little bit more enticing. All right, so we already know that Jeremy and Jinger have a pretty traditional marriage. Jeremy is studying seminary. He is at a church in California. They moved to Los Angeles last year, and it had created a little bit of a rift, I believe, between Jim Bob and Michelle Duggar. They obviously were not thrilled about Mama and Daddy, Jim Bob and Michelle were not super thrilled, allegedly, that Jinger and Jeremy were moving to the city of heathens. You know, all of that crazy stuff that happens in Los Angeles. Watch out. So, Jinger has been living her best life. She dresses like a gem. She's got her dapper husband who loves to wear a bow tie and a suit. In fact, Jeremy was on Instagram bragging about riding on a moped while he was in a suit. Jeremy takes stylishness to a whole nother level. A man on a suit on a scooter. Like, imagine that picture. Anyway, Jeremy and Jinger actually talked about some changes that are coming up in their lives, and it includes Jinger having the baby. Okay, so these two have this podcast that is a weekly podcast called they talk about their faith. They have interviews. They're offering hope to people. They're offering a place where people can talk about their experiences, discuss the Bible, feel good about God. You know, it's overall a pretty decent podcast if you are a Christian. I don't believe anything that they've really said on the podcast is super offensive, not overly conservative. The two of them seemingly have a decent banter, although some people criticize Jeremy for being a little bit overly assertive and a titch arrogant. But this podcast has also given us gems where they have talked about how Jinger was a little bit ill-prepared for life because of the way that her parents kind of only prepared her to be a wife and a mother, nothing more, nothing less, and how she wished she would have used her time in singleness to explore the world more. Well, now she's about to have a mom, and it sounds like she's gonna leave this podcast. Wait, what? Yes, she's going to be taking time off, and it seems as though it might be indefinite. Now, on the podcast, Jeremy and Jinger admitted that after she has the baby, she's not going to be on the podcast. Now, they didn't say necessarily like how long it's going to be until she returns, but she's going to be taking an indefinite break, to which Jinger said she would miss having this engagement with her community and being able to share her stories and be able to connect with other people. So Jeremy has promised that during that time, he will share his faith journey and his testimony. Jinger shared her testimony in this most recent podcast. So now we have Jinger, who's about to have baby number 2. She said her due date is next week, and she's having a girl. They also discussed why they haven't shared their name. So they were saying it was a strategic move for them not to release the information to the public because they wanted to have something as a surprise for others. They felt that with her pregnancy, sharing the gender reveal would be something that they could share with the public, but then they also said not having the name shared would allow them the space to have nobody's opinions about their names. And I actually liked this argument. They were talking about how everyone knows someone that has a name, and because of that name, you may or may not like them. this does happen a lot. I remember when I was pregnant with my son and we were talking about specific names, and so many people had opinions. Like, you would tell them a name and they'd be like, nope, I know that guy. I don't like him. That's the worst name I've ever heard. You can't talk to me about this guy. And so they said by not sharing the name, they won't have to deal with other people's opinions, other people's perceptions, or anyone trying to talk them out of the name. Now, they did a little bit of a unique name for their daughter, Felicity, which, by the way, is such an adorable name, and Felicity is such an adorable little girl. So I would imagine something sort of old-fashioned like Felicity. Jeremy and Jinger have this more like old-fashioned aesthetic where they're sort of this classic kind of couple. So I would imagine the name would be a classic sort of name. Now, we've had another birth of a baby in the family most recently with the birth of Evie. Now, Evie is Joanna's daughter, who I believe might have actually been named after Evelyn, the sister of Michelle Duggar. Now, Michelle Duggar has a couple sisters. Actually, she has 3 siblings. Now, she has one sibling. Her siblings are actually a little bit older than her. So her parents kind of had like 2 kids and then they had 2 other kids. So there's sort of this like age difference between the 2 older and the 2 younger. And her sister, Evelyn, who happens to actually be in a relationship with a woman, long time, it was an interesting choice for Joanna to name her Evelyn. Now, it's never been stated that she's actually naming her after Evie, but it's kind of not a coincidence, I don't think, at least. That's my opinion. Anyways, so what are your thoughts about this? Are you of the opinion that if you tell someone the name of a kid when you're thinking about it ahead of time, that people will have this idea about ruining the name? Like, did you have a name that when you were pregnant that you were like, oh, I hate this, like, I love this name, like say Kelly. Say the name is Kelly, and I'm sorry for any Kellys out there, and then you tell your friends, I am naming my kid Kelly, and then you say, I knew this girl named Kelly, and she was a total, like, or Kelly, she was really, I didn't like Kelly. Kelly's great, she's very hyper, whatever attribute you want to attribute to Kelly. So, did you tell your family about your child's name before you had the baby? My husband and I, had our name picked out way ahead of time, and we actually told people ahead of time. And because we told people ahead of time, people were actually pretty stoked with my son's name. We actually picked the name Von, V-O-N, and people kind of liked the fact that it was very, different. It was strong. It was this Nordic name. So, and it also happened to meet Hope, which is why we love the name for him today. But was there a name that you wanted to name your child and you were afraid to tell people about because you were afraid of hearing their opinions? And do you like the fact that they are using this strategy in order to not only enjoy the name without any sort of perceptions, but also because they made a good point? Once you actually name the child, that's who they are. Like, imagine you name your baby and it's Sarah, and everyone is like, no, that's a Natalie. You know what I mean? Like, no, once you meet the baby, of course it's Sarah. It was never Natalie. Because when I think of my son, he was never going to be the other name that we named him because, of course, he's Vaughn, right? So what do you think about this strategy? I actually kind of like it. And I really enjoyed listening to this podcast. And I do wish her the best as she has her baby along with her maternity leave. All right, you guys, tell me what your thoughts are in the comments below. Bye, guys.